Hey everyone, and welcome to the Healthy Team Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Erickson, and this is the show where we dive into the real stories behind thriving workplace cultures, exploring everything from wellness and morale to leadership and productivity. Today, we're joined by Sam Budoff and Achim Klug, who are CEO and CSO, respectively, of Parley Neurotech, a company developing some groundbreaking treatments for central hearing loss, a challenge that affects hundreds of millions of people, including myself, frankly, who struggle to hear clearly in noisy environments. Anyways, I'm very excited to welcome the two of you to the show today. Sam and Ahim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks for having us. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. And let's kick things off by having you tell a little bit about your business and the kind of work that the two of you and your team do at Parley Neurotech.
Sounds great. So I think it's worth emphasizing that we're here to treat a lot of people who are suffering from these noise in or these hearing and noise difficulties. So, we'll call that cocktail party syndrome. It's actually the term of art, which is kind of fun because a lot of the time these are more medical sounding, not as interesting. But Achim has been studying this for 30 years, and I'll let him tell about the academic side of things. But suffice it to say, he has discovered not only the cause of this disorder, but also how to treat it. So our business is right now trying to lead clinical trials to test in humans this treatment that works so well in animals, so we can ultimately bring it to people like you, Mark, who are suffering from this problem.
Fantastic. Now, you've worked in some very intense and innovative environments, from startups. And Sam, I know you've done a lot of deep academic research, and I him you as well, obviously. How do you personally maintain focus and mental clarity when juggling such complicated work?
Well, at least for myself, the work is fun. It's a real privilege to be able to not only spend your day working on, kind of these big interesting ideas about how do we treat people's hearing, for instance, or as I was working on in the past, things like how do different animals see the world. But it's something that when you kind of have these fun questions to focus on, they become all consuming in the best possible way. And Akam, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you just told us you may benefit from our future treatment, that's the motivator right there. Like, you won't believe how often we hear this. You talk to somebody on the street or in the airport lounge and tell them what you do, and they say, "Oh, please work faster. I need that treatment." So that's the motivator right there. Having that said, of course, we work in healthcare, and so healthy work environments are important to us by default, and we're trying to implement a number of strategies into our workflow to make sure people stay healthy and stay productive. And it is just not about the workers only, but it is also just about the productivity of the team.
Excellent. Thank you. So building a company like Parley Neurotech involves a ton of uncertainty, right? Scientific uncertainty, regulatory uncertainty, business related uncertainty. How do you decide what to focus on first with so many different things going on?
I mean, the truth of the matter is we have to juggle, right? And that's kind of the beauty of startups. Everybody gets to wear a lot of different hats. Today I happen to be in the lab, and just a few hours ago we were on the phone with lawyers. So it really is prioritizing what you have to prioritize, and I think that's true for the whole team. We're really lucky that Occam has built such a great team in the lab, and everybody is able to decide on the role that best suits them based on their skill set. For instance, we have one team member who's a fantastic surgeon. So it makes a lot of sense for him to be taking on those responsibilities. And when people have things that they gravitate towards, that makes it easy. But other times you have to just decide, hey, this is something that is a focus right now. For instance, deciding who is going to be our best regulatory partners. And at that point, we have to just decide that this is a block of time worth spending to get it right.
So, how do you protect your team from burnout while still moving the science forward and all the other things that you have going on while maintaining the speed that you need to make the company successful?
Yeah, maybe speaking to that, like I tell everybody the work has to get done. Like there is no way around it. If I told you you don't have to work hard, I'd be lying to you because you have to work hard in pretty much every career. Like name one employer who is not wanting to get the max out of their people. Like they just don't exist. And so the work has to get done, but having that said, personal freedoms, like I support people having hobbies and having activities outside the lab. And so I don't force somebody to be there 9 to 5, for example. Like if you are like one time I had a great athlete on the team whose goal was to participate in the Hawaii Ironman, and he did. And so he could juggle his exercise and training regime with working in the lab. Sometimes he showed up at 6 and left at 10 to go into a long bike ride and came back at 5 p.m. Another day he didn't show up until noon, and then yet another day he left early. So all that is good as long as the output is there at the end of the week or the end of the month. And so that's what I tell people. I never care if I see you between 9 and 5 or not. Like I care how much work gets done, and so do what you need to do to have a happy life and balance that within those parameters. Like another rule we have, for example, is like we're a small team and everybody is a critical component of that team. It would only take one person to bring down everybody. So when somebody new is getting hired, we have a veto rule. Like anybody who feels they cannot work with that person has a right to veto that hire because people who are already working there are more important. That's something I learned from my PhD advisor, for example. He had that same rule. And it's not even about deciding who is better and who is less good. It simply is the people who are on the team and are functioning already have to have priority. And if somebody comes and tells me I will not be able to work with that person based on personal issues, we don't need to ask whose fault that is and if they're right or wrong. It's just the fact that they're telling me it would add stress to their life to have that person around. That's good enough for me.
Wow, that's fantastic, and I'm sure your team members appreciate that. Is there in your lab, Ahim, is there a particular, maybe a single system or mindset that helps you manage the risk without getting overwhelmed by it?
The which risk are you talking about? The risk of experiments failing or the risk of people getting burned out?
I would say the just overall risk, managing the overall risk. It'd be all inclusive. Is there
Yeah,
just a mindset that you might have that you try to teach to your other team members just to help them to help them be successful?
yeah, I would say de-risk wherever you can. Like there is, of course, the risk that your work goes nowhere. So we're trying to minimize that by doing little steps in a particular direction. Like we have a new idea and we do the least amount of work in that direction just to see if there's anything to that idea. If not, then we're not spending the next few years burning out everybody chasing something that doesn't work, but we'll move on to the next idea. Like the risk of people getting burned out, like I want to make sure that everybody gets their time off and don't encourage, like there's sometimes this culture in the workplace where the more hours you can be physically present, the better it must be. Like you want your boss to see you at the workplace, like the first one to come in, the last one to leave. Not true. Like again, I care that stuff gets done. I don't care to see your face in front of me all day long. So that's a way to address that risk. There, of course, occupational risks, like if we deal with hazardous chemicals or something, like that's usually put on us by the university. Like they regulate us there. We just have to follow their rules, whatever they are. So this is how we're minimizing that risk. Um, and then overall, we keep in mind like our mission is to increase health, in our case, hearing health. And so like we would not be working towards our mission if we didn't take healthy lifestyles and healthy workplaces into account. That's kind of part of the mission, in my opinion.
And I'll just add on to that. In terms of the business risks, to your point, Mark, there's tons and tons of uncertainties that we have to navigate. And I think just the way we design good experiments, we have to take a step back and really look at what is known, what is not known, and what we reasonably set out to achieve. So, with that mindset in mind, we look at the business risks the same way, whether it's deciding on a given regulatory strategy we're going to pursue versus another, or hiring a given law firm versus another one. We have to really do our homework and just put in the effort to think it through and decide which risks are going to be outweighed by the benefits that we should achieve.
Excellent. So, in your experience, where do most smart people overcomplicate things, and how do you keep it simple where it matters most?
I think people get excited, frankly. I think when you have a fun idea that you get to work on or a fun project that you get to be a part of, it becomes easy to say, hey, we could also do this one extra thing. Oh, maybe this one extra thing. Oh, maybe this one extra thing. And I think, at least from my perspective, when you're designing these strategies or these experiments, it becomes very important to look at what you can accomplish and then decide what you can realistically accomplish and kind of pair back to that and decide that this other thing that you would love to do that you're excited about, it might be an overcomplication right now, and it's better to leave that for later. And this kind of goes to Achim's ethos that we're going to do effectively the minimal experiment that we can to achieve the outcome that we know this is worth putting more and more time into. So it's more about managing, I would say, the team members' enthusiasm. You don't want to tell them no, but you also don't want to necessarily say, let's do this and burn you out. We want to stagger things in a way that leads to everybody's kind of fulfillment.
Okay, very good. Could you share with the audience a little bit about kind of what the company's vision is for the product? If it's going to be something over the counter or something where they would have to consult with an audiologist. Love to learn just more about what your vision for the company's product is going to look like.
It's a great question. So, in terms of what we're selling, this is going to ultimately be a medical device, but it's not going to be hearing aids. I think one thing we haven't really mentioned right now is that this is a neurologic disorder that we're treating. So, there's a brain attached to your ears, and that brain is really what is critical in these noisy environments for figuring out which sound is worth paying attention to. So, suffice it to say that by addressing problems at the level of the ear with something like a hearing aid, you're not going to be actually fixing that problem. And that's why what we've set out to do is to make a device that will treat the disorder. So it's effectively going to be something like a physical therapy type regimen. So you will be prescribed a medication that has been on the market for other indications for decades and decades and decades that Achim discovered in combination with very highly engineered sound stimulus. Again, think something like physical therapy. We can actually retrain the brain circuit that is not functioning correctly. Now, in terms of distribution, I think you raise a great point about how do we get it to patients. Audiologists are absolutely somebody we would like to partner with. We think it makes a lot of sense to go with credible medical authorities so that they can diagnose patients correctly. Say, you have this disorder, you do not really need a hearing aid. It's not going to help you. In fact, it might make your problem worse. And instead, try this treatment, which is what we would provide. And, we look forward to helping people through that route initially. Down the line, who knows? Maybe there will be direct to consumer or telehealth models of this, but this is, good problems to have down the line.
Yeah. And then your
Okay.
other question, is this going to be prescription? Most likely, yes. We're still talking with the FDA. I'm still not concerned. I think the more important question to ask would be, like, if we have any medical condition, the best case, like, for us to solve them is to take a pill and move on. Like, we don't like to lie in hospital beds for days or weeks because that's missed time. We don't want to lie on the couch at home and feeling sick like a dog. Like, if I have to be sick, my personal opinion, if you can give me a pill and I take it and I move on with my life and get better, that's basically the ideal treatment in my opinion. Like, non-invasive, non-time consuming. So that's kind of what we're getting at. So for me, the question is not so important, would I need a prescription or not? But the question is like, how much does this treatment or any treatment take away from my quality of life, take away from my time that I have to spend doing it versus trying to do the things that I like to do? And I think that's what excites me, that we're really very close to the ideal treatment.
Well, I got to tell you, as a potential user, that's incredibly exciting to me. And just so I'm clear, so you're talking about it potentially being the outcome being a pill that I could take in conjunction maybe with some physical therapy, to where I could kind of learn how to kind of just train myself to be able to hear better in certain environmental conditions.
It's a great clarifying question. So the way it actually works, it's passive. It's not like physical therapy as we all know it right now, where you have to go someplace and lift your weights or do whatever stretching has to be done and actively participate in this. The brain circuit that we're treating is so early in the sound processing cascade that it's almost like a reflex the way it works. So this is to say the physical therapy we're giving you, the sound stimulus, it's something that you listen to passively. And at least in the animal experiments, we're talking about a 30-day treatment where the patient would take the drug for these 30 days. It gets the system ready and in a position where it can learn. And then you, for 1 hour a day during that 30 days, you're listening to this sound stimulus while you do whatever you need to do around the house. You probably don't want to, listen to an opera or something at the same time. It's probably going to be distracting, but anything that is, let's say, lower intensity that you could listen to an audiobook during per se, would be an appropriate thing to do for that hour. And then at the end of the 30 days, your brain circuits should be restored to basically the young state where you didn't have these hearing and noise difficulties if they arose due to aging, for instance.
Wow. Okay. So that is absolutely amazing. Now, would I have to continue taking the medication beyond the 30-day kind of training phase? Is it something where I would continue to take this to maintain, or how do you anticipate that working?
It's a great question, and when we look at what the human experience is relative to the animal experience, there are, lifestyle differences that we can't really test right now. For instance, we believe this treatment will probably be prophylactic. So someone who has not yet manifest the disorder might be able to take this earlier in life and prevent it. Difficult to prove in the animals, fairly easy to do once in humans once we've gotten FDA approval. Now, in terms of how long will you be taking this, based on our animal data, it really is just the 30 days. We think, knowing what we know about the underlying cellular mechanisms, humans are much longer lived than the animals we study. So realistically, it will be probably something you'll have to take every couple years.
That's incredible. Wow. I'd love to be a beta tester for your company when you get there. How far along in the research are you, and when do you anticipate that you might get FDA approval? I know it's probably very hard to guess with any government entity when that might happen. But what are your goals and your hopes for eventually coming to market?
So, Achim, why
So
don't you tell a little bit
yeah.
about the
So
research
we
model?
we hope to launch the phase 2 clinical trial by the fall. So we're now working on the application. So we're hoping by the time the summer is over, we can enroll people in the phase 2 clinical trial. And then that trial should last about 2 years. And assuming it is successful, which we have high hopes it will be, then we would go to a phase 3 in about 2027, early 2028, and then go to market not too long after that. And realistically, if you're enrolled in phase 3 clinical trials, you can already get the full treatment.
And it's worth maybe emphasizing for your audience, Mark, the way FDA approval works. You've got phase 1, which basically means, is this safe? We've already proven this is safe. We're using a drug that's been around for a very long time, so we don't need to worry about that. Phase 2, which we're going into in the fall, that's efficacy. Is this snake oil or does it actually work? And, based on our animal data, this is definitely not snake oil. We're very confident this is going to work. And then phase 3 is effectively final market approval, where certain decisions about how clinical practice will be administered are made.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Um, you know, to go back to the team side, could you share a little bit about if there's a time when you as a team got wellness or productivity really right and what helped? And I know you've shared a little bit, Akim, about giving people flexibility
Mhm.
with scheduling, and that's all very good and helpful. But could you expand on anything else in terms of enhancing wellness and productivity in your team?
That's a good question. So, other than flexibility, supporting people where I can, a lot of motivation for our team really comes from success. People are excited about what they're doing. They understand the significance. That's a huge motivator for everybody to work harder and get done faster, because we continuously hear from everybody out there, okay, work faster. We want this treatment. We can't wait for it. And there is nothing else out there at all at the moment. And that's a huge motivator, people telling you this is important work. And I've always been the kind of person who wanted to have meaningful, important work. Like, if you put me into some job where it doesn't really matter if I show up, I would probably not show up. Yeah, so I'm not motivated by the payment or by work hours that are put upon me, but by goals that I have, kind of this whole self-motivated thing. And I try to select for people when I hire somebody who have that same thing. I do not want to be in a position where I tell somebody every half hour, now I would like you to do this, and now I would like you to do that. And honestly, I don't have the time for it. It frustrates me, it frustrates them. And it's also like, I want people who use their brain at work and think along. Um, like, allowing people to push back just because I'm the boss doesn't mean I'm always right. I have never claimed I'm always correct. Like, if I say something and somebody on the team believes this is a mistake, I do not only allow them to speak out, I expect them to speak out. And like, that makes everybody feel a full member of the team. Like, we basically have no hierarchy here. Everybody's opinion weighs the same. That's motivating, that's helping against burnout. I think burnout often comes with frustration. I'm supposed to spend hours and hours on something that I don't really care about, that nobody else really cares about. So why am I doing this? So that's a big contributor to burnout, in my opinion. And if you like what you're doing, um, then that goes a very long way. Like, I had a professor when I was a student who said, if you gave me time and money, I would do exactly the same as what I'm doing right now. So, how lucky is that person? Like, will he ever get burned out? Probably not.
Right, right. And I imagine in the research community, there's probably a lot of research projects, unfortunately, that may not go anywhere.
The
So
majority.
for yeah, so for people to be involved in an initiative like what you guys have going on that has
Yeah,
so much promise and is so needed, and I'd like to reiterate, I'm going to be one of the people who would say,
yeah.
hurry up because this really is needed.
We will
That's got to
call
be
you. I
very
promise
fulfilling.
we'll call you. Yeah, we'll call you
Well,
when you
thank
get
you,
there.
thank
But
you.
then
Yeah.
the idea research doesn't go anywhere, that's actually not true. Like, what might be true is not every research leads to a treatment immediately, but almost all research is working towards answering questions. In fact, any funding agency would require that. I can't write a funding proposal to the NIH and say, I'm proposing to do this, and if it works, great. If not, we lose everything. That would never get funded. Like, you always need to design your experiments in a way where we learn something and push the boundary no matter what happens. So the inherent risk of research is not so much that it all fails and we spend a lot of money on nothing. The inherent risk is that the hypothesis may not be correct, but if we do our experiments correctly, we will still learn something and push the boundary. And so therefore, it's actually very little research that flat out fails, I would argue.
That being said, it is easy to be demotivated when it's, an experiment doesn't work. So, especially from the perspective of, say, a grad student who is coming into a project, they only have a limited amount of time to achieve what they're setting out to do. There is a lot of personal pressure that that person brings to the project to achieve and to ideally, show something interesting from their hypothesis or to find something unexpected that leads to this next phase. And that's usually what happens. So if you design an experiment well, even if the hypothesis itself is incorrect, which again happens all the time, very, very easy to come up with an idea, very hard to come up with the idea that is true in nature. But if you're doing your work in a let's say a conscientious way, and you're really trying to pay attention to what is on offer, there is usually another path or another hypothesis that's generated, and that's how this whole enterprise really keeps moving step by step.
Fantastic. Well, I guess one more question I have is, what's next on the plate for your company? What do you guys have next to what's the biggest challenge that you're facing in order to bring this to market after you proceed through the various FDA clearances and so forth?
So, I'll be honest with you, the challenges of bringing it to market, we're not as concerned about as the challenges of getting it to the position where the company itself is self-sustaining. I believe the statistic is something like 20% of startups actually make it just based on their business model alone, to say nothing of the technology. So from our perspective, we're both scientists, and Achim has done a phenomenal job funding his lab, raising several $1 million to actually come up with the underlying animal data that has proven this hypothesis and has allowed us to spin out this company. But now we have to jump into, let's call it the real world of venture capital, which is a very, very different ballgame. So we're both actively learning how to navigate these waters and ultimately bring in funding that will help us build a self-sustaining commercial entity that can bring this home and ultimately help patients like yourself, Mark.
Well, fantastic. And this has been such a great conversation, and I wish you both all the success in the world, and I hope that you are able to get the right venture capitalists to make the strategic investments to help you guys bring the product to market as soon as possible. And thank you both for your time today and for sharing your insights also on building healthy teams. Before we wrap up, can each of you let our listeners know where they could find you online and learn more about Parley Neurotech?
Absolutely. Well,
Yep.
if you just search parley-neuro.com, you'll come to a fairly simple website, if we're being honest, and that has an email address that you can reach out to us on. Alternatively, you can go to Achim's lab website. So that's going to be kluglab.org. And there's a lot of really cool information there. Achim's been publishing really, really interesting blogs describing how really the science of hearing in a way that the lay audience can digest. Otherwise, I would say LinkedIn is a great place to find either of us as well.
Great. Akim, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yep. Nope, that's pretty much true. Like my lab website has all the scientific details, but I'm also making a point to translate what we're finding into generally understandable words that, in the form of the blog post. So that's kluglab.org if you're interested. KLUG lab, LAB, all in one word.org.
Well, I'll be sure and check that out because I'm
Okay.
definitely interested in learning more. And thank you both again. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into the Healthy Team podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe and share the podcast with your team or anybody who's interested in building great workplace culture. We'll be back soon with more conversations to help you build stronger, healthier teams. And until next time, stay well and lead well. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.